Hey, this is JC Rock and Metal Reviews. My name is John. I have a special guest, Josh Keech. We're going to be doing a tier maker list, so a tier of our favorite thrash bands. So basically, we're not going to waste any time. We're just going to take turns. We're going to pick a band. We're going to say a few words about it, and that's it. So, Josh, how about you go first? Pick a band.
Yep. Okay. Let's just get one of the big hitters out of the way first. Megadeth. For me, they're one of the top thrash bands. For me, they're one of my most influential bands. When I was a teenager, they were one of the first thrash metal bands I got into. They've done some absolutely fantastic stuff. I know they've done some iffy stuff as well, but on the whole, their discography is solid. Their classic albums as well. You can't really beat their albums. Yeah, so putting them, it's hard. For me, I think they're top. For me, they should be an S.
You want to go the S?
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are a few weak albums, even the weak ones I do kind of like. I mean, I like Risk a little bit. Super Collider has a few good ones, but the other ones, really great albums. Okay, so that's cool. I'm gonna do one. I'm gonna choose the band of Forbidden. This is one here. So this is a band I listened to them. They released an album, their second album called Twisted Into Form. I believe it came out in 1990. And I was young. I was maybe like 20 years old at the time. And really great band. It's just, it's heavy, but the singing is very melodic and really heavy riffs. Since then, they've put out a couple more albums. They kind of went the industrial route in like the mid-90s when they released an album called Green, which I don't like that much. But their first album was awesome. And they released one in the 2010s, I believe. So I'm going to put them, just because of their lack of discography, I'll put them in the B category because they have some great ones, but they do lack the discography. So almost an A, but I'll put them in the B.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. You're up.
Okay. So let's go with one of the newer bands. Let's go with Havok, a band that I've been getting into a little bit recently, and I think they're great. Their new album that they released last year was really, really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
I love the guys' vocals. Sort of almost has a bit of a black metal vibe to them vocals, which I think is a little bit different especially for thrash. The lead guitar playing is really, really awesome. The drumming is fantastic. There's that song that they've done on Time Is Up. I think it's covering Fire, and their blast beats are just wicked. So for me, just mainly because they're a sort of a newer band, we'll probably put them in the A tier for now, but they could be in the S tier, in the future maybe. But yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I know that they're a new band. I mean, they only have, I think, like the last album was called 5, right? So 5 albums, but they're pretty solid. But yeah, I agree. Okay, I'm gonna go with I'll go with one of my favorites, Suicidal Tendencies. Great band. They started out as basically punk rock, then it kind of moved into kind of like hardcore punk, and then they kind of did like the crossover where it's like the punk into thrash. And they have a pretty cool discography. I don't really think they have any bad albums. They've been fairly consistent. So for that reason, I'm going to throw them in the A category. So they do have some greats. Lights, Camera, Revolution. That's like one of my favorites. They released one in the 90s, which they kind of like mixed with alternative rock. And some people might not like that. It's called The Art of Rebellion. But that's probably my favorite. They kind of mix some like acoustic guitars with the thrash. I like that one a lot. So that's my A tier. So it's crossover thrash. If you like punk and thrash mixture, you probably like this band. Okay, you're up.
Yeah, I've never really checked them out before. Right, okay. Next, let's go with Death Angel.
Nice
band that I've been getting into very recently. I've been going through their discography. I think they're quite underrated in terms of the top 8 classic thrash bands. I think they're the one that gets a bit overlooked, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Marcos Squader's vocals are just absolutely immense. I don't think there's many thrash metal vocalists out there that sing like him. It's a bit like the thrash metal version of Robert Plant mixed with a little bit of Halford. Great.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think they've done a poor album either. Really, all their stuff's solid. I think they're a little underrated, so I think they would definitely be in the A category for me.
Put them up at A, cool. Yeah, this is another band I like a lot. I like their I like all the stuff, but I like the earliest stuff. Act 2, Act 3, I think that's probably my favorite because it has that acoustic ballad, Room with a View. I really like that one. And from their second album, Bored. This is another solid band. They haven't really released any bad albums. Okay, so that's good. So let me pick one. Here's another crossover band, Nuclear Assault. Very heavy band. They are kind of on the crossover punk side, but definitely one of those bands I started listening to again when I was young. I was maybe like 18 or 19. I bought the CD for Handle with Care, and it's just really like the heaviest stuff I was listening to back then. It's just a band, very heavy. They do have like kind of like a punk influence. Their lyrics are very like political. They talk about like saving the environment and things like that. So I'm gonna put them, but they do lack discography. They don't really have a large discography. So I'm gonna go in the B category for them. But another pretty cool band again is that like crossover thrash style. Cool, you're up. Cool. Yeah.
Right. Next, I want to talk about Sepultura.
Nice.
I really do like Sepultura. Their early stuff, you can't beat their early stuff, from Schizophrenia to Roots. Sort of that era of Sepultura is probably the best, probably some of the best sort of metal that there is.
Yeah.
And you know, beyond that, Max went off and done his own stuff in Soulfly, and Sepultura, they kept on going. They've released some really cool albums over the last 20 years. And their new one, Quadra, was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, definitely.
So it could be another one that could go in the A tier, really.
On the A? Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Sepultura. I prefer like the early stuff that Max Cavalera years, but I do like all of this stuff. I think maybe the ones that came right after Roots might be like a little weaker, but definitely they picked up, and definitely their last album, Quadra, such an awesome album. I really love Chaos AD and Arise. Those are really some of my favorites as well. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to go with Annihilator. This is a Canadian thrash metal band. Their first album was really good, called Alice. I think it's called Alice in Hell, or Alice in Hell. It's one of the others. But they mix like classical music. So the guitarist, he's kind of very like classical oriented. I really love that album. Their next album, they kind of went like a little commercial, and it's one of those bands. They've been very consistent, but like they've never reached the popularity as like the other bands. Like they never reached that like big four status. So they are consistent, but I will put them in the B category again, because I think like, you know, that a lot of their albums aren't like really like memorable, but just because of like their first album, and they do have a lot of like good albums, and for their consistency, I'm putting them in the B category. Okay, so
right. Okay, so let's go with Kreator next, a band that I've only recently started getting into. probably haven't really listened to enough of them yet, but I can make somewhat of a judgment on them right now. I think they do some really good stuff. Their later albums, I think there's some really cool stuff on there. It's not exactly thrash though, I would say. It's sort of, you know, there's a lot of other genres in there other than thrash, sort of almost going with the sort of Iron Maiden sounding stuff. So for that reason, I probably would have to put them maybe in the C category, just because I haven't listened to them enough. But I'm sure that they are really, really great. They have done some really good stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Kreator's a band. They've kind of like changed throughout the years. They were a very extreme metal band in the beginning. In the 90s, like most bands, they pretty much changed their style, but they went in like this like goth direction. And they are pretty good at albums, but they really changed their style a lot in the 90s. They came back in the 2000s with thrash, and they kind of started incorporating some like melodic death. They are a pretty good band. They've been consistent. I'm also kind of new to them. You know, I knew about them when I was young. I was listening to a lot of thrash, but you know, I never listened to them when I was younger. But I think I just discovered them a couple of years ago. You know, when all the streaming came out, and it was easy to listen to bands. But I like them. But I agree with C. I think that's a fair assessment. Okay, let me go with. I'm going to go with Sacred Reich, another band. It's that kind of like a crossover thrash band. The only thing is they do lack discography. They released a couple albums in the late 80s, early 90s. Surf Nicaragua, a really great one. A really great song like The American Way. And it does have that like kind of like crossover punk sound, but then it kind of disappeared for like many years. But then they released another album. I believe it was 2019, not too long ago. Again, returned to form. It was kind of a short album, like a 30-minute album, but they're a very good band. They have a solid discography, but due to their like lack of discography, I'm going to go. They have good albums, but I'm going to put them in a C just because they lack albums. So that's it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm thinking about going with Testament next.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So consistent, so solid band. They haven't really done a bad album, personally, to me. I think their whole discography is fantastic. For me, their best album was The New Order. Love that album from top to bottom. Alex Skolnick's probably one of the best thrash metal guitarists there is. Chuck Billy's vocals has got better and better as it's gone along. As he's got older, it's just got better and better.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so consistent. Their songwriting is just fantastic as well. Oh, I think they'll go in the S tier. I think they're S tier.
I agree. They're probably one of the most consistent bands. I mean, they've pretty much like been releasing, and I know some people don't like some of their 90s albums like Demonic, where they did kind of go in that death metal direction, but I think they are very solid. So I think I agree with your S tier. This is probably like one of the first like heavy bands that I started listening to. My first album was Practice What You Preach when it came out in 1989, and since then I've been a fan. Okay, so let's see what we got. I'll go with another Canadian band called Voivod. This is a band. They're kind of thrash. Now it's kind of like pushing it to consider them thrash, but their early albums are straightforward thrash. They do kind of move into like progressive metal. They have some cool cover songs from like early Pink Floyd. So they do like that, like progressive metal, but they are an original type of band. They're kind of very like sci-fi lyrics. They have a lot of that. They kind of mix a little space rock. So they're not straightforward thrash, but they are fairly consistent. But they're not I wouldn't say worthy of the A tier. I'll put them in the B, just because they do have a fairly consistent discography.
Cool. Yeah, that's a band that I've never really listened to them. Haven't really ever got into them yet.
You might like their earlier stuff more, but give them a listen sometime. Yeah.
Cool.
You're right.
All right. I'm gonna go with Vio-lence next. A band that I just couldn't really get on with very well. I think it was the vocal style just really put me off the band. Musically, brilliant, because I love Machine Head. Rob Flynn and Phil DeMel were both in the band, and then obviously Rob Flynn left to do Machine Head, and then he got Phil DeMel in for the later Machine Head albums. And yeah, Phil DeMel is a fantastic guitarist, and the riffing on that album, that's the Vio-lence, that album, some of the riffing's really, really cool, but the vocals I never got on with very well at all. Put me right off. So for that reason, maybe C tier, could be even D tier, maybe C tier for the guitaring, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, we could put them in C. This is a band that I think I've only heard that album, which is the one I have in this icon here. What's it called? Eternal Nightmare. Like, I thought it was good, but this wasn't a band that I really like went back to a lot. But I thought that they are a decent band. They are heavy. I think they have another album in the works. I gotta look that one up, but it's interesting. If I went back and listened to their albums, I might like them a little more. But yeah, I agree. I think that's a fair assessment. Okay, so we're down. We got Anthrax. We got a couple of big ones. We got the. So I'm gonna go with Overkill. This is a band. They're from the U.S. They're from New Jersey, which is one state over where I grew up. Very consistent discography, and this is a band. When I was younger, listening to thrash metal, I kind of like didn't like them. I think like the vocals, the vocals are kind of like a little like high pitched at times. Like I didn't like them at first, but it's a band that if you give them time and you listen to their discography, you probably might like them. This is one of those other bands that I like their newer stuff more than their older stuff, which is not very common. Like most people like the old school stuff, but I actually like their albums like from 2010's Ironbound on. And like I said, they are consistent. Pretty much every 2 years, another solid album. So I'm putting them in the A category. Because they never released anything bad. Pretty much solid discography, and they are like super consistent. Like every 2 to 3 years, another album. They crank one out. That's what I like about them. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, another band I need to check out a bit more. Let's go with Metallica. Now, Metallica are my favorite band ever, just for starters. And on my channel, I'm doing a series about Metallica because it's their 40th anniversary this year. So I'm doing a whole series about Metallica, all sorts of different stuff.
Yeah.
But for me, the reason why I play guitar is because of Metallica. They got me into rock and metal music, really. They have to be in the S tier for me. And their first 5 albums are just killer, really. I know they've done some stuff after that was not as good, but they brought it all back when they done Death Magnetic, and then their latest one, and then there might be a new one next year. So yeah, I think, and also for influential as well, Metallica, one of the biggest influences on thrash metal.
Yeah, I agree. And Metallica is the band that kind of like made me a metalhead. Like You know, when I was, like 17, 18 years old, I bought like Guns N' Roses Appetite for Destruction. That's a great album, not really metal. But that was kind of like the springboard for me to like want to like explore heavy music. I found Metallica's Master of Puppets, and since then, I just really loved heavy metal, and I've listened to it like for the next 35 years after that. And like I said, the load reload, they do have their moments. Saint Anger, we'll forgive them for that one, but really,
Yeah.
I mean, just because of their influence and the fact that you like them, I like them, and it's a band that everyone likes. So definitely, I agree with the S tier. All right, so I'm up. I'm gonna go with Anthrax, another band that I like. I like it. I saw their first album, Fistful of Metal. It's an album I don't really like that much, but their second album and the third album, Among the Living and Spreading the Disease, awesome albums. I even liked when Joey Belladonna left and they released The Sound of White Noise. They brought on John Bush. I really like Sound of White Noise. A couple ones after that, maybe a little weaker, but that's fine. But they didn't have a great comeback with it was Worship Music and the other one, which came out in 2016. I can't think of the name right now, but solid band. For All Kings, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
But they are really awesome band. I'm going in the A tier for them.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, Anthrax is really, really cool. I'll go with the final band of the big four then, Slayer.
Okay.
Slayer are awesome. I was lucky enough to see them before they retired. Where they had Gary Holt on lead guitar, and they were fantastic that night. But yeah, as a band, for their influence as well, they influenced death metal, black metal, all that stuff. Jeff Hanneman was a brilliant songwriter, brilliant guitar player. Tom Araya's vocals, brilliant. They released classic album after classic album in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
Seasons in the Abyss and Rain in Blood and South of Heaven. Just classic albums. Yeah. S tier for me.
S for you? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's fair. So Slayer's a band. Again, when I was started listening to thrash metal back in the late 80s, this is one of the bands I was really into. So I think their first 5 albums are really great. Everything up until, even past that, but Seasons in the Abyss, that's probably one of my favorites. Just a solid album. And then the ones after that, this is kind of a band I kind of like lost touch of. I have listened to their other albums here and there, but I agree, definitely very influential. They kind of took thrash metal and they kind of like almost created that like extreme metal genre as well. So they're definitely pioneers. All right, so we're down to 3 more, and actually I might ask you to do like the last 2, but I'm gonna pick Exodus.
Yeah.
And no, this is a band I like them a lot. My first album with Exodus was Fabulous Disaster, and really great album because I remember watching the Toxic Waltz, so the music video for that. And this is a really good album because they kind of like mix styles. They have a song on that album called Cage in Hell where they mix like kind of like a bluegrass, and it's kind of like one of the first thrash metal bands to kind of do things like that. But this album, I like most of their albums. They had that comeback album, the one with the Blacklist. What's that one called? That one's a really good album. And just really heavy band, and they're solid. So I'll put them in the A. Because they're kind of like almost like out of the big 4, they could be like considered number 5, along with Testament. Like they would be up in that level.
Yeah. Although to be fair, you could make a big 6 really, or 7. With them bands. Right, okay, so I'll do Heathen next. Heathen are a band that I've been recently getting into not that long ago. last year. I started listening to them when they released their new album, Empire the Blind, which is awesome. But you might know the guitar player in Heathen is Lee Altus, who's in Exodus now.
Oh, cool.
That's his band. And yeah, Heathen were about, they started in about sort of 88, 89, done one album, and then like most thrash bands in the 90s, went away and didn't do anything. But yeah, when he got the Exodus gig, then he sort of redone Heathen, sort of recreated Heathen, and they've released a couple of albums since then. And yeah, they're pretty cool. Their album last year was really, really good. Had some really cool stuff on it. Very Exodus-like. You like them kind of almost groove metal sounding riffs that Exodus have on their albums. You hear it on the Heathen albums. But yeah, pretty cool. Lee Altus is a really cool guitar player. I'll put them in the B tier.
B.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I'm actually glad that you picked Heathen, because I think out of the entire like tier list, that's probably the one band I like just don't know at all. And I probably need to, now that you talked about them, because it sounds like something I would probably like. And I guess I didn't know about them back in the 80s. I guess for some reason they didn't catch my attention. And I've heard people talk about their album last year, but I didn't listen to it. So I've actually never listened to the band. So something I'm going to change that soon. So I'm going to have to like look them up. So definitely, I'll actually do the last one. So I was actually hoping you would take Heathen. So Evile, I like this band. Really new type of band, and it's one of those bands. I was just online one day looking at just different metal pages, and I was looking at someone made a list of top 10 bands that sound like early Metallica, and this band Evile came up on that list, and that's kind of how I found them. And I started listening to their album. I think it was their first album. I forgot the name of it, but they do have that like early Metallica, like Ride the Lightning era sound. So I really like them, but they're a new band. So this is a band I like. I think they do have a solid discography. They released, I think, 5 albums, if I'm correct. Their last album just came out. I know they have a new vocalist, kind of very heavy, more death metal style, but I will, no, I'll put them in the A, because I think even though they haven't been around a while, they haven't been around that long, but very solid discography. So
yeah, I would have gone with putting them in the A category as well.
Cool.
Yeah, that's just a really, really cool band. Real sort of, I don't know, their sound has slightly changed since their early stuff. They're not like pure thrash now. They kind of add a bit more death metal in there, especially with old Drake. His vocals are very deep and a little bit more sort of grittier than his brother Matt, who sounded a little bit more like James Hetfield. Sort of thing going on. But yeah, they've done some really, really awesome stuff. Enter the Grave and Infected Nations are brilliant albums.
Yeah, those were ones
I don't think they've done a bad album really. Their whole discography is excellent, and it's only going to get better as they go on. So
yeah. So this is again one of them are like the new wave of thrash metal. These are like one of the leaders of that, along with Havok and actually we probably could have had Warbringer on this list too, but they're another one of the newer bands, really great ones. Okay, so that's it. So everybody watching, please give Josh Keech a sub. I'm gonna put his link in the comment description.